Time for a nice long list of terms to define.
As follows.
Migration is the movement of people from one place to another. Internal migration is when people migrate within the same country or region. International migration is when people migrate from one country to another. Emigration is when someone leaves a country. Immigration is when someone enters a country. People migrate for many reasons. This is just another list. Economic migration, such as moving to find work. Social migration, to be near family.
Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall.
Political migration can be moving to escape war. And environmental migration, to escape natural disasters. Push and pull factors are often used to explain why people migrate. Push factors are the reasons people leave an area, like lack of services, high crime, crop failure, flooding, poverty and war. Lovely stuff. Pull factors are the reasons people move to a particular area, like high employment, wealth.
I'm here to answer people's questions.
Better services, good climate and fertile land. Migration impacts on the country the migrant moves to. Economic migration can have a positive impact if the country gains cheap labor. However, it can also cause tension in the local community and the migrant might not find work. Migration also impacts on the country the migrant leaves, as it loses part of its workforce. However, the migrant might send money home to their family. The impact on migrating refugees can be severe.
It's hard to imagine a worse place on earth.
Many refugees from Darfur have migrated to neighbouring Chad due to civil war. They are living in cramped and unsanitary conditions. Many have lost family members due to the conflict or disease. There's little food and water, and most rely on aid agencies for food, shelter, and medicine.
This is the story of the Nazi persecution of the Jewish people, as told through the autobiography of one woman, Elspeth Rosenfeld. Elspeth was Christian, but her father and her husband were Jewish. And had she been caught escaping, she would have faced arrest, imprisonment, almost certain death. The fate shared by the many million victims of Nazi racism.
Yes, please, as soon as you can. She's from Germany, I think.
The customs man telephoned for a doctor, and he gave me some brandy, and then we waited.
He's very busy, but he'll be here as soon as he can.
And I don't know why, he didn't seem to want me to fall asleep, so he kept asking questions. And I found myself telling him everything. The whole story.
Is it too painful to talk about?
No. No, strangely, quite the opposite.
Because, you see, to tell my story meant I was alive to tell it. It meant I knew how the ending went. And the ending was me, there, talking to this foreigner. For so many years I'd been terrified the ending might be quite different.
Elspeth's story begins in 1933. The Nazis had swept to power. Their stormtroopers were now protected by the government, and one of their favorite excesses, the persecution of Germany's Jews, was now government policy. There were arrests, beatings. Stormtroopers urged people not to shop in Jewish stores.
Seems so long ago. I remember the shock. Yes, but this explosion of hatred, it was so overdramatic, I couldn't take it seriously. I remember I was working in the prison services. I was a social worker. I had my hat on. I was on my way out the door, and the director phoned, and he said, "You shouldn't come to work anymore." And I asked, "Why?" And he said, "You wouldn't be safe here anymore." And I remember thinking that was so funny. I mean, of all places, how could I not be safe in a prison?
Was he a Nazi?
I suppose so. I think that deep down many Germans disliked the Jews, but they kept their hatred bottled up, and then in 1933, pop, the lid came off.
For years, the Nazis had spread the lie that Jews were to blame for Germany's decline. Now their policy was to stamp out that Jewish influence. Books by Jewish authors were burnt. Jewish civil servants, lawyers, doctors lost their jobs and suffered public humiliation. For Germany's Jewish community, the basic right just to live and enjoy life like anyone else was suddenly under threat. They were ordinary Germans through and through, but now they'd been picked out, branded un-German, an enemy within. Why? Deep down it was jealousy. The Jewish community was successful. Many German doctors, lawyers, bankers were Jewish. The Nazis twisted this success. In their propaganda, they said it was based on selfishness, that the Jews had got rich at Germany's expense. It was all lies, but the propaganda was powerful, and it fed old hatreds, born long before the Nazis came to power.
When my mother married a Jew, her family would have no more to do with her. They turned her away. Their own daughter. What had a Jew done to them? I don't know. They saw with blinkers, and so they never got to know my father's family. They were wonderful people, so full of life. And then when my turn came, just like my mother, I married a Jew. They were my community. Siegfried. This is his photograph.
Is he...
Dead? No, he is in England. I think. I have heard nothing for so long.
Elspeth married Siegfried in 1930. 5 years later, such a union would have been impossible.
Marriages between Jews and German citizens, or those of similar blood, are forbidden.
The marriage law, one of the Nuremberg decrees of 1935, was aimed at protecting the purity of German blood. The Nazis divided people into racial types. They said Germans were descended from the Aryan race. This propaganda film shows Aryans of old, the Teutonic Knights, supposedly the root of all German culture and nobility. Pure Aryan Germans could be recognized from their blonde hair and blue eyes. It was all a fantasy, but the fantasy was dressed up as science. Germans were being taught to think of other races as somehow less than perfect. And the German people bought the lie. Signs cropped up. Jews not wanted here. With the Nuremberg decrees, this discrimination was set down in stone. German Jews lost their citizenship. They lost the right even to call themselves German.
And yet, you know, the funny thing, how losing your citizenship hurts less than those silly, petty details. Not being able to sit down in a tram. Public benches painted bright yellow, set aside for Jews only. I would not have sat there for my soul.
In any case, you're not Jewish.
No, but I'm not Aryan either. Oh. Half and half. It was so confusing. They call it a science. They like to think it's so clear-cut, but... I had a friend. He was Jewish, but tall and blonde. I went with him past a restaurant. There was a big sign, Jews keep out. And he said, watch this. And he strolled in, and he flirted with the waitress. And when she brought his food, he said, oh, sorry, I didn't see the sign. And he just left, leaving her shaking in anger. After Kristallnacht, they took him away. The Nazis never liked to be mocked.
Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, was on November 9th, 1938. It was a pogrom, an organized attack on German Jews. Across Germany, 100 synagogues were burned down. 300 Jews were killed. 30,000 were rounded up, mostly men, to spend a week in holding camps. A taste of worse to come.
Our house was burned down. I remember walking through the streets, glass under our feet, not knowing where we'd sleep. It was the morning after. They were still smashing windows. We had to dodge into the doorways. There were vans of stormtroopers. They'd draw up, arrest people and take them to the camp at Dachau. It was one of the most terrifying days I can remember.
Where did you sleep?
There was a grocer that we knew. At first, she said there is no room, but come in, wait for my husband. And then her husband didn't return, and neither did her son, and so there was room. I think that one of the most terrifying things about Kristallnacht was knowing suddenly there was no more hope. For so long we said, it'll be all right. But now it was like a war had been declared.
In the year that followed, a third of the Jews still in Germany left the country for America, Palestine, the United Kingdom, anywhere that would take them. The Nazis made it as difficult to leave as it was to stay. They could take nothing with them, and what they left behind was taken by the government. Other countries put limits on refugees. Queues at foreign embassies stretched around the bloc. One of those lucky enough to get an exit visa was Elspeth's husband, but Elspeth's own papers failed to arrive.
We had promised that we would never be apart, and we hadn't in all our marriage, not for more than 1 or 2 days. And my husband said, I won't go without you.
Is that too tight?
No. No. But he wasn't strong. He wasn't coping well with humiliations. And so I begged. Go.
If I'd known then how long we were to part, I'm not sure that I would have had the strength.